Well, I had mentioned this on previous episodes of the James Show, but Tucker Carlson was speaking at the Tarrant County GOP. And they put up the speech, and I'm going to play a few clips for you. I'm probably not going to get all in on this segment, but I'll get in as much as I can here. The whole speech was about a half hour. I cut out 4 short clips. They're about a minute apiece, so which is longer than I like for them to be. But we're dealing with some more complex thoughts here than this is good and this is bad. But it was more cultural than political. Check this out.
At this point, it's true. Most of my relatives live in Texas. And we were at a memorial service for a family member last weekend, and all my many children came, including the ones who already live here. And we're just having brunch, and one of my relatives comes to me and says, "Can you come here for a sec?" "Of course." "Do you mind if I pray for you?" "Of course." There's one thing I like is being prayed for. And this person puts her hands on me and says this prayer out loud to Jesus, and I'm thinking, first of all, oh, thank you. And second, this does not happen to me where I live. And that very thing just happened to me right before I came out here. Somebody, "Can you come here for a sec?" "Sure, of course. I'll go anywhere you ask me to go, by the way." That's how I wound up here. And this man, I'm not going to call him out by name and embarrass him, puts his hands on me and prays for God's guidance. And I thought, no, really? And all of you are probably thinking, well, yeah, that's what we do in Texas. That is not what they do in other states. And it is the thing that makes the state different, really different from any other place. The fact that you have a county sheriff who goes to hospitals to pray with dying prison inmates or jail inmates, that's the most wonderful thing I've heard all day. That does not happen anywhere else.
I've had a similar experience. I had to live in New Orleans for a few years, and it's a very Catholic town. And you think, well, what's the big difference? They had different holidays, and there's quite a bit of difference that you would notice. I don't think it was the Catholicism that was the problem, though. It's just because it's a hotbed of blue. And I didn't live like in the suburbs. I lived in New Orleans. So there wasn't a whole lot of prayer going around at school events. In fact, there was absolutely zero. But when I come back out here to Bug Tussle, where I'm from, dude, they open the football games on Friday night in the whole stadium. My pastor is the guy on the microphone in the press box, and he leads the entire town and the visiting team in prayer. And he'll tell you sometimes these other teams that come in from like bigger city schools or far enough away, they're like, "Man, how do y'all get away with that?" I mean, get away with it. Get away with saying a prayer? Get away with? Why would we need anything to get away from? It's oh, that's right. Jesus is evil in a lot of places. Oh, I forget. These people don't like prayer. There's some people out here that think that's a bad thing. Okay, I got it. So, he starts off just immediately, not going political, going cultural. But I think this is an important message here. Here's the next clip.
If you're mad about someone saying prayers, we're on different teams on the deepest level. That's the truth. And the forces running this are not celestial forces. They're just not. This is not flesh and blood at all. If you're offended by prayer, you're taking orders, okay? And I don't see another rational explanation for it at all. And so you should keep that in mind as you face down this election. And of course, it's an honor to be in Tarrant County, famously the biggest red county, really the only remaining population center in the United States, if I could say. I don't know where Oklahoma City is these days, but this is the prize for the people who want to stop sheriffs from praying for dying inmates. Like, if that offends you, first of all, if it offends you when people acknowledge God, what are you saying? You're saying what God himself has said, "No gods before me." You think you're God. And so it outrages you that someone would acknowledge a power higher than you. And for me, politics is really simple. I divide all players in the political arena into 2 categories: people who think they're God and people who know they're not. And I'm on the side of those who know they're not.
Right, and they're not always against prayer. They're not always against expressions of religion. They would never say that to, like, if there was Native Americans doing some sort of ritualistic religious dance around a fire or whatever. Oh, look, this is beautiful. This is natural. This is heritage. No, they want to tear down society. They want to create chaos. But I don't know if they're necessarily jealous of God or if they think they're God. But I like the direction he's going here, because this is something that I've been trying to piece together. Is no matter what side they take on an issue, their result is always death. I hate to say, like, because it sounds like I'm being hyperbolic, but I'm not. And Tucker said it better than me on Friday.
They never stand up and say, the other side is promising you this, I'm promising you that. Not one time do they say that, because they can't. Because what they're promising is death. What they're promising you is no grandchildren, which is literally death. Your line dies. And I don't think there's a chapter in the Old Testament where children aren't described as synonymous with wealth. You want to know if you're prosperous? You want to know if you're in God's favor? How many kids do you have? How many grandkids do you have? How are they doing? That's the oldest and most basic, and will always be the most basic measure of prosperity. How are your descendants? And what they're promising you, every person in this room, is no descendants. No descendants. It's really that simple. You can reduce all these debates about climate or crime, all the weird sex stuff. I'm not even going to dignify it with a name. I'm just going to call it that weird sex stuff. But if they're promising you the opportunity to castrate your children, what are they really promising you? No grandchildren. The end of your line. And Solomon and David would instantly recognize that as an act of total war against you and your people. Period. Because that's what that is.
Yeah, and so I've tried to describe it on previous episodes as sort of an auto-genocide is what it... there's got to be a better word than that. This is. I know I have shortcomings sometimes, as much as I do public speaking, but we're at every turn. What do you think she should do about this pregnancy? Should she keep it full term, or should she have an abortion? Abortion. Okay. Well, what about someone who's kind of on the fence? Do I pursue the traditional nuclear family, or do I do some sort of LGBT variant? We celebrate the variant. Okay. Well, I have this kid, and he likes playing with dolls, and sterilize him. And it's like, man, okay, well, what about this global warming thing? We got to keep our carbon footprint as small as possible. Well, I would like to have a whole lot of kids. Oh, no. Kids are litter to the environmentalists. And that's not a word I'm making up. I've heard more than one say it. I have a clip of Joy Behar calling kids litter. So I have another clip from Tucker Carlson coming up. But what do you think so far? I mean, death cult, is that going too far? Yes, because it's not everyone that votes that way or votes for Team Blue or wears a blue jersey. They don't subscribe to all of this. They just happen to get roped into it because their one issue or their driving issue is something else. But make no mistake, they are giving gas to the car that is the death cult. 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. You have to be taught to recoil at prayer. You have to be taught to recoil at the mention of religion or God. They are taught this. And it doesn't have neutral outcomes. They think they're being neutral. Oh, well, let's, no one has a monopoly on the truth, and everyone has, every religion has its flaws, and no one's really better than the other. Well, you're not really coming out with indifferent results. You're coming out on the side of evil. It's one of the things that Evan Sayet talks about. Being anti-God means you are entering into the realm of promoting death, basically. When you say, a society that embraces abortion more so than the society that doesn't, which one's going to have more kids? The society that embraces LGBT lifestyles more so than it does straight lifestyles, which one's going to have more kids? The societies that so many of these other programs, whether it's you giving puberty blockers to your kids or not, it's going to result in fewer kids. That's just up and down the road. Whether you're worried about your carbon footprint, fewer kids. How do biologists measure the success or failure of any animal population on Earth? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Are they multiplying enough to at least replace themselves? If they're not, they're what? They're in a failing society. Well, right now in America, if you take out immigrants, people who come here, legal or illegal. If you just look at the native-born population, we are not reproducing enough to replace ourselves. We are failing. Canada's failing at a much greater rate. Germany, Russia, Denmark, these people are falling off a cliff. You know, you wonder how were these societies in the past? You know, there were Romans and there were Pomeranians and there were all these other people that used to exist, and they go away. Yes, societies go away if they do not continue pursuing these values and these mores. And then he ties it all in together with the border chaos. Right, so I'm saying this is more of a cultural discussion than a political discussion. But check out Tucker Carlson's comments at the Tarrant County GOP event last week. And this is my fourth clip on border chaos.
I would talk to my cousins in Texas, and they would say, we've got, multicultural, we've got different cultures living here, but our Texans with Hispanic last names have been here for 300 years, and we all get along. And I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. And I still think that. I think it's the coolest thing ever. But there's something about that experience that convinced Texans that if you just open the border and millions of people come from all over the world, not even Latin America, but every region of the world, that it's going to work out. Oh, it's not going to work out at all. Not for Texas and not for the country. Because there's no reason to do this except to destroy the current system that we have and replace it with another system with different people in charge. That's exactly what's going on.
Okay, now he wrapped it back around to politics. Okay, now we see. But this is something we talk about on the James Show, too. One of the things that they all have in common as well is the creation of chaos, tearing down existing institutions for the purpose of replacing them with some other form of government that they prefer. Mark in Waco, you're on the James Show. Thanks for hanging on. What do you think about these comments from Tucker Carlson?
I totally agree. I'm not a practicing religious person, but even I have friends who are agnostic or atheists. They look at that attack on especially Christianity as a way for the government to instill, like you said, an institution to control people. Because once you have faith in something other than the government, then they have no control over you, and that's why they do that. That's the same reason why they use racism. Because if we are collectively together, all right, they can't control us, but they separate us into little categories to control us, and that's how they destroy society.
Oh, yeah, absolutely agree on all that. And their attack on religion is to the benefit of the state, because one of the things that we have a hard time recognizing, because we were born in context of the state already doing welfare, already doing Social Security, already doing Medicare, already doing Medicaid, already doing public schools, already doing so many of the things that before our government did it, who was the primary institutions providing that service to the people? Mark, that was the churches, and not one specific church. It was just religion in general, whether it was in the Protestant world, the Catholic world, the Muslim world. You had schools that were what? They were Christian schools, Catholic schools, Baptist schools. But you had hospitals. I was born in Mother Francis Hospital. Gee, that sounds fairly religious, doesn't it? And so it used to be the Christian's job or the Muslim's job or the religious people's job to what? Feed poor people, which has now been replaced by food stamps, house them, which has now been replaced by public housing, educate them, which has been replaced by public schools, and so many things that the government likes to do, that wants to do with the old age pension, taking care of old people, taking care of poor people, taking care of sick people. That's what we're told to do. That's what we're told to do in both Testaments, more so in the New Testament. And we used to do that. In fact, that used to be one of the great public PR moves of our religion, is that how can you hate Christians? All they do is feed poor people, heal sick people, educate children, and take care of old people in their dying days, running hospice cares and whatnot. And in fact, when the Christianity first started out, one of the reasons why the Roman persecution didn't work is because the people in the hinterlands saw that why would we want to do anything to these Christians? They don't steal from anybody. They don't break the law. They're not killing anybody. They're not stealing our wives. All they're doing is educating children, helping poor people, and feeding hungry people. That's it.
Yeah, you said it right there, because, and even then, they would help you even if you didn't convert to their religion. But if you don't vote a certain political ideology, or if you don't stay on welfare or food stamps and everything, and you try to get a step up, the government rips the rug right out from underneath your feet.
Well, and that's right. And on the exact opposite end of the spectrum from that, that's one of my messages to my fellow Christians out there. Hey, you know how I want to get rid of all these government programs? I want to get rid of public schools. I want to get rid of welfare, public housing, Medicare, Medicaid, all this stuff. What are we going to replace it with? We're going to have to step up and be the Christians that our grandparents and great-grandparents were, not just these people that don't have to worry about any of this stuff anymore. We're going to have to pick up that slack. We're going to have to feed the people instead of food stamps. We're going to have to educate the kids instead of public schools with their transgender story hour or whatever. We're going to have there's a big responsibility for us to step up if we really get the government we want, and they can't have that. This is one of the big reasons why they are anti-religion.